Matthew recently received a lifetime ban from the New York City Marathon. I'm going to tell you why, because Nationers, welcome back. How are you guys doing? Welcome back to episode 66 of The Realest Podcast. Banner is right behind me. I hope you guys are doing well. I do want to first off start this episode by congratulating and thanking you guys for getting us to 400 subscribers on this YouTube channel. If you guys are obviously watching audio, which actually now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if I uploaded audio for the last podcast. I actually am actually now thinking about that because I think I rendered it overnight. And I don't think I had audio. So I got to go back and actually check that. But if you guys are watching audio, thank you guys. I know some of you guys obviously out there do watch and do listen via audio. So thank you guys first and foremost if you do. And if you guys watch on the YouTubes, thank you guys again for getting us to 400 with an asterisk. It's 400.0. That's why I got confused. Anywho, Nationers, welcome back into another episode. This is episode 66. Let me make sure that I have that correct. I think I should, because last time that we were on, we were talking about Lunchly, and that was episode 65. Episode 66 is today. There's been a few things that have happened since last episode. I've started to upload a few shorter form content, kind of to boost this podcast as well, because I feel like especially if I'm not posting like a episode a week, sometimes I'm like, is there like really anything new to talk about? Obviously, if it were a guest, like every Sunday would be super awesome. But I think for the most part, when it is like just a solo podcast like myself, then it is kind of hard for just generating newer content every single week. And yeah, I think if I were to open the brand up for like what types of conversations we have, yeah, there definitely could be an episode every week. But I think right now I'm kind of just focused on like, hey, how do I do this consistently? And especially with the solo episodes, I want to make sure I have something interesting to talk about because like I said, every week there's nothing that's always, how would I refer to it? Something that's just like, wow, that's the main headline, you know? And yeah, I could make episodes where like, you know, we just kind of chill, chat and whatnot. Like, how's my week? I feel like after 5, 6 of those, it could kind of get kind of a lot long in a way where it's just like, wow, you're just talking and whatnot. So I kind of let it marinate. I've been posting some short form content on this channel. And again, with the hopes of just kind of driving traffic to the new episodes that come out, and just something new that maybe I found out, something I could share, and even some of those like breaking news topics that I don't necessarily talk about a whole lot. Like one just happened. I know we've mentioned the Olympics before in an episode. And one of those stars of the Olympics was Yusuf Dikic. He was a shooter. But there was also the other side of the coin in RayGun, Rachael Gunn, who is actually, by the way, a sick nickname, by the way. Like, athletes usually have, like, a fun nickname. That one is super dope. Like, I guess, like, RayGun doesn't necessarily, like, pertain to her dancing and her breakdancing, that is. But, like, RayGun, especially having the name Rachael Gunn, super cool nickname, if you ask me. She actually just announced her retirement, which I found, I wasn't like taken aback by. I was kind of shocked because I know after the Olympics, as much as a meme as she kind of became, it's this weird content swirl because like imagine if like, I don't know, somebody from what's necessarily like a country that maybe the US isn't like tapped into like the market of like social media. Australia is like still a little bit tapped in, but let's say we take somebody from like Singapore, right? Like Singapore, we don't hear a whole lot about content creators out of Singapore, at least here in the US. If you're in Singapore in Southeast Asia, you probably hear a lot about content creators that come out of there. But imagine like somebody from Singapore became like a national treasure, or maybe more or less a social media treasure because of something that happened during the Olympics. And like, they don't do social media. They simply do cycling. Like cycling is like all that they do. And they became kind of like a meme. They kind of became a viral sensation. I think that's the word I'm kind of looking for, the term. And they became a viral sensation because of their cycling, for it being a little goofy in a way, right? Or maybe their outfit was a little goofy, you know? And they didn't really ask for that. And not to say that like everyone that goes viral is going to ask to go viral. There are people that are actively seeking virality. But then there's the other side of the coin where somebody like Rachael and maybe this made up Singapore athlete, they love what they do. And in turn, their love for the sport that they do, cycling and obviously breakdancing in this case for Rachael, kind of became viral for it being bad, right? Like if you gave your heart out and you thought you were the best singer in the world, but really you absolutely suck. Like you're so bad. Like it's funny to dunk on people. And on the Olympic stage, if you're going to give it your all and do something you truly are passionate about and love and be bad at it, that is like the biggest stage to be dunked on. The biggest stage. Like, I get it if somebody goes on America's Got Talent, you might see a clip here or there, or you might see somebody on like Shark Tank, right? Or like Dragon's Den, the UK version of Shark Tank here in the US. And you poured so many hours and you spent so much money to build up your company, and you go up and you freeze. You freeze in front of all the sharks or the dragons, and you become this really unsung viral hero for dunkage in a way. I use dunkage as more of a verb, but again, with the Olympics, that is a global stage. And in the world of social media, Rachael Gunn was made the dunked on, donkey nominee. Yeah, maybe something. She wasn't doing the dunking. She was getting dunked on. But again, she actually just announced her retirement, which kind of is funny because I guess, again, after the Olympics, it was rough. It was a rough period of time for her. But then in turn, she was actually doing a lot of stuff with breakdancing and like trying to get people to pay. Well, maybe not trying to get people, but she had started like some sort of service and whatnot. What I would have done if I'm Rachael in this case, after like taking, retiring from competitive breakdancing. Now, people can retire from like football, but still do a lot of stuff in football. They could go coach, they could go mentor. What I would have done in this case, especially at the Olympics, I would have like got some sort of PR team. I would have put like guest appearances everywhere, guest appearances on like talk shows, guest appearances on like streams, guest appearances on people's YouTube videos. You probably would have made tenfold, 10x the amount that you probably would have if you hadn't like shelled up. And to each of their own. Like some people don't like that, right? Like some people are just like, I just want to do this and that's it, right? They're so distracted, or no, they're so disconnected like from the social media world. And by no means is that wrong. Like there are so many people out there that just like, hey, I'm not on my phone. Like what's going on in the world, Like maybe 2 months later, they're finally finding out about Rachael Gunn. So yeah, just with topics like that, like her announcing that, those little things that kind of happen, like Russia just fined Google, I think 20 decillion, which is like 20 zeros. Well, I guess it would have to be an odd number because it would be 3 pairs of 3. So let's say 21 zeros, 20, and then 21 zeros after that. Obviously fitting the comments in there. They find YouTube. Like that's like a interesting, I guess, like if this video ceases to exist on YouTube, you know why. It's in the hands of Russia. Now, do I think that is crazy? Nobody's ever had $20 decillion. Like I guess if I invoice Apple for like $20 quadrillion, are they obligated to pay that? And especially like a fine. Like YouTube doesn't necessarily operate out of Russia. From my knowledge, they exist in the US. So it is interesting. Like, does that go to like the global GDP of the US? I'm unsure because it's like a fine is interesting because like you get a parking ticket, you get a fine, right? Or I guess what other types of fines are there? Like a parking fine makes the most sense for me. Like you park somewhere in a lot that you're not supposed to, and maybe you paid for 3 hours, you stayed 4, you're going to get fined for that, I don't know, like 2 minutes that you were late and you saw the person writing down the ticket. You got fined for it. That's like going to you. So how does it work when like a country does that to a company? That to me doesn't quite make sense. And obviously I don't think YouTube's going to pay for this. I think they're going to do something and be like, cool, that's fine. Oh, I think my door's open. I think the door's open. Is the door open? Oh, the door is open. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. The door's open. I was like, I see the top side of my door there open, but then I saw the bottom side. I'm like, that's not open. Anywho, it is open. So yeah, just Russia. They apparently fined YouTube for some type of copyright thing. I know for me personally, when I listen to certain types of songs and music, even if it's just for a little bit of time on YouTube, when you upload it, they'll usually give you like a copyright check. And it's like, hey, you might get limited access to this. And really all it is there's only impact in Belarus and Russia. That is it. Now, yes, I have uploaded videos before that are just like banned because of copyright. Like I've had a video taken down about Logan Paul. And whatnot. Not that it was necessarily his fault, but I guess in the chain of events, maybe it is. And so, yeah, like I've had, like I look at it, I'm like, oh, it's just Russia and Belarus, or sometimes it's just Russia. Like it isn't always Belarus in that case, but they do kind of, they work in tandem in a way. So maybe I think that's kind of what it is. I think for the vast majority of people that don't know that side of YouTube, I think it got kind of dumbed down. So I didn't understand it in the way that they kind of portrayed it in outlets and news media. And so I was just like, okay, well, this is what I see. I'm kind of putting the puzzle pieces together. But yeah, also some things that happened. I know last episode I was kind of ended off with like the Liam Payne death. It was a super long episode in general, and I didn't really want to like go too far in it. And I think it was very fresh at the time of Liam Payne's death. It is now been broken. News is broke that 3 people are charged in the death of Liam Payne. So that is somebody very close to him that I think was in the room with him, somebody that supplied the drugs, and then, well, that would make the most sense. Somebody that supplied the drugs, somebody close to them, and then I think it was a staffer at the hotel, if I'm not wrong. Now, again, that is not a fact, but I know obviously the person that supplied drugs, it was the same thing with like the Mac Miller death. Usually people that supply drugs and there's somebody that died afterwards, usually they get charged. Obviously, again, one of the more infamous ones is the Mac Miller death. And so, yeah, now some updates, some things that have happened, at least criminally. 3 people have been charged in the death of Liam Payne, which is, again, it's so tragic, especially so young. I know, obviously, he kind of dealt with a lot of things post One Direction and kind of with his label. I know that was like a huge thing that a lot of people have kind of turned to. And I don't exactly know how that type of stuff works, because it's like, yeah, like if I got dumped, like, and I self-exit, is it like, it's not my girlfriend's fault because that happened, right? And so, and again, I'm kind of thinking that a little cynically. So like, I'm trying to think about what that kind of looks like from like a label standpoint, and people that were a part of his team. Like, was there repeated behavior that kind of got overlooked? Because like, I guess you are not necessarily a business. So like negligence might be something that's out of question, but at least 3 people are charged in this way. And they seem to be very closely connected to the events that happened during his passing. And again, it sucks to see, because, again, he's so young. There's a lot of things that there's a lot of what ifs, you know. And I know the videos that I've seen of him just like being outside the hotel and people just like sobbing and being like, you saved me and you've helped me through so much. I think even at times, like those types of moments maybe can be a little overwhelming, because I think you just put a little bit more pressure on yourself in a way. And, you know, again, I'm not trying to put reason to causation, but I feel like there's a lot of celebrities out there, like where I look at somebody like Keanu Reeves, like a lot of people look up to him, you know, as an idol. Maybe don't necessarily like are like fanboying or fangirling like right away, because he is a little bit more of a reserved private person. But maybe when you have a lot of people that support you and follow you, there has to be, just like any athlete, there might be a little bit of sense of pressure, especially like Bronny James. I was watching the Lakers versus, who were they playing last night? The Lakers were playing somebody last night, and LeBron James' son, he's now in the league. He's about to go down to the G League to help further his development, and so he's still going to be a part of like this two-way G League type thing, but one of the big things is that he came into the game, and he got the ball, and everyone started cheering, and I think for everyone in the crowd, I'm not crying, I just hiccuped, in the crowd might look at it and be like, oh, shoot. That's not the best decision right away. And the commentators have kind of mentioned that. And I just kind of like, wow, like it kind of puts in perspective that you also have to still kind of do what's best for the end goal of this game. The team, and obviously with like a minute 20, it was 14 down, like potentially people could still come back. A lot of people have scored a lot of points in a little amount of time. So yeah, just one of those things, like maybe there's a little bit of pressure in regards to that. But what I do know, and I know I've kind of been talking about social media in a way that is new, virality. There's a sense of pressure to make content. There's a sense of pressure to kind of live up to what you've created, to continue what you've done, and an overall message that you send as a creator. And one of these creators that I want to talk about, and obviously he's in the title of this video. Now, if you guys don't know Matt Choi, sorry, Matt. I'm just going to refer to Matt. I said Choi so oddly there. I do apologize. But Matt Choi is a footballer turned marathoner, runner. Running content kind of became what he has started to make. And one of the biggest things is that Matthew has done not necessarily the unthinkable, but he has done something so outrageous that I don't know how anyone would come back from this decision. I truly don't. Now, I have a few things here just of like what Matt has done. Matt, again, he is a content creator, specifically tied down to running. Now, this could be hybrid races, like high rocks, endurance races, ultra marathons, half marathons, 5Ks. He just makes running content. He tries to inspire, and he does inspire. He's a great motivator in ways. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like David Goggins. I think David Goggins is a little bit more intense, but I think Matt is kind of a little bit more down to earth. He talks to you like, hey, like the grind doesn't stop. We're making this happen. And so I could look up to Matt in a lot of ways when it comes to kind of that motivation, that mindset, right? I think mindset's a huge thing for Matthew. Again, I don't know if Matthew's actually his full name, but usually Matt and Matthew work in tandem, like Tom to Thomas. But Matthew recently received a lifetime ban from the New York City Marathon. I'm going to tell you why, because Matthew, again, he did the unthinkable, and I don't know how anyone comes back from this, because Matthew was caught using e-bikes during the New York City Marathon. Now, the New York City Marathon is the biggest marathon in the entire world. It had over 55,600 people actually finish the race. Now, of course, there's going to be maybe a handful to hundreds of people that don't finish, but started. Now, what happens when you have the biggest marathon in the world? Now, with social media, this looks a little different. The one thing about social media that kind of changes what the New York City Marathon looks like from even 20 years ago and 10 years ago is that you have an influx of content creators that want to make content. The New York City Marathon is a very unique race because unlike the Boston Marathon, where you have to actually have a qualifying time to race, and even like the prestigious ones like the Boston Marathon, but also the Chicago Marathon, where the Chicago Marathon, a lot of elite runners run on it, and they've set both the world record on the men's and women's side of the marathon distance. So what makes the New York City Marathon so unique, regardless of all the social media content that comes out of it, is that mostly anyone that wants to do it can. Now, I don't know if there's any limitation. Like, I've seen people that paced it at like 6:50. Now, if you ran a 6-hour, 15-minute marathon during the Boston Marathon, you would get so scrutinized because it's like, what are you doing? How did you get there? And I'll kind of come back to that in a bit because this situation is pretty unique. I've seen some videos. Basically, when I was on my Instagram doom scroll, I saw a video, just a multitude of videos actually talking about like the New York City Marathon. I've seen Casey Neistat's coverage of it. I've kind of seen, I follow like running pages, which are more like just highlight pages, like where they credit the user that posted it. And I just seen like a bunch of stuff about the New York City Marathon. And I'd seen, Flow Tracks, which is kind of like a track and field, of course, but also just anyone that actually competes in 5Ks, 10Ks, road miles, any distance that is running. And Flow Track covered Connor Mance and Jonathan Young, the 2 U.S. marathoners that actually competed in this year's Olympics. And I was like, wow, this is like super awesome. There's a bunch of like coverage around this, and I was very intrigued. It kind of drew me in, like social media should, in that way, like it bringing eyes and coverage to the marathon. Now, I've never ran in it, didn't even know that it was happening, but now I'm kind of invested. And in the cycle of looking and diving deep in just like the New York City Marathon, I kind of uncovered the truth that is why Matt Choi received his lifetime ban. So like I said earlier, he was using e-bikes on the course. Now, this is illegal for one of 2 reasons that I know. Not only can you not have a pacer, like, yes, you can run with a friend, but that's fine, but you cannot use anything but your feet and your legs unless you are like ambulatory racing in this case. They're just on e-bikes. These are like city e-bikes, by the way. When I was in Boston last year, they have these like city bank e-bikes that you get at like a little station of like 15 bikes, and you can take one and then return it at like another. There's 2 people on these bikes, and Matt is following closely behind. And on these bikes are his brother and his videographer. Now, the videographer kind of makes sense. The video, you know, you're trying to cover the New York City Marathon, especially because Matthew had a huge goal of running sub 3 in the New York City Marathon. Now, I don't know if it's, I don't know how much marathon coverage you guys watch, but if you've watched anything, especially when there is more people, it can be a lot harder to actually run the paces you would like, because yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of people that try and cut through, or maybe you have to slow down, or maybe you have to move. You're running more than a marathon. You ideally wouldn't do that. That's why when these elite people, they run in a straight line, they run corner to corner, there's not people around them to like distract them. Yes, of course, there's the crowds and people cheering them on, but when you're back in the pack and you're trying to run sub 3, it can be very difficult. So comparatively to the Boston Marathon and even the Chicago Marathon, it's a lot easier to do that because there's less people around you, especially if you know, maybe you're at 3:30 and you're trying to, you just want to run under 3 at this marathon. The most attendance, the most finishers in a marathon ever in a single coordinated, organized event. So e-bikes, that's why they're illegal. You can't have a pacer, right? And 2 is that, hold on, let me check my notes because I want to make sure that this is A-okay. So 1 for pacing. 2 is because you are endangering the other racers. Now, when I saw the coverage of the New York City Marathon, I didn't really see much about Matt Choi until I was on Matt Choi's page. And just like any reel, I always kind of want to get the temperature. I want to check the climate of, you know, oh, congratulations, you know, like, the climate changed. The climate change on Matthew's comments was crazy comparatively to any other comment section I had seen. Now, Matthew, again, is a social media, he's a content creator. He has a following, right? Not that I expect a certain amount of number of comments, but there seemed to be so many comments that it was like an outlier in my regards of like content, right? Like if I posted like a video of me running, like, oh, I'm getting ready for like the New York City Marathon, there might be like 60 comments, right? There was like 1,400 comments. Like that is a lot of comments, a lot. And so again, he's gotten blasted. He's received a lifetime ban. But this is just the tip of the iceberg in the controversial racing past of Matthew Choi. Now, like I said, he has used e-bikes at the New York City Marathon. And by all knowledge of me, I was like, damn, that like, what are you thinking? You know, like, what are you thinking? And so he comes out and he's walking down this like alleyway. He's like, there's a brick building over his right shoulder, right? There's a brick building. And then there's just like this like metal picket fence. And he's just walking down from one street to the next pretty much. Like he's in downtown. He's like, you know what? I effed up. That's on me. That's not on any partners trying to get, you know, different stuff about the race. That's on me. We shouldn't use e-bikes. We endangered people. And I actually want to play. I think I can hook up my Bluetooth real quick. I want to play it for you because I think this really puts into perspective what has happened. I just had it. I actually had it right before I joined in. Let me click my Bluetooth here. Let me turn on my Bluetooth. Hopefully this comes through. Let's pair. Let's see if we can pair it here. But yeah, again, one of the biggest things that obviously he had done, Rodecaster Pro. There we go. Please connect. All right, this should come through the headphones and come in for you guys. Oh, please, come on. We're right there. It's not too far. It's just right there. Please, please, please. It's right there. Do I need to move my phone over? It's right there. What do you mean? Hold on. Let's do that maybe. Like it's right there. Why is it not pairing? I need this to pair. If not, I'm just going to play it through my phone, through the microphone. That could very well work. I think I'm just going to do. What is happening? Why is it not going? Anywho, I'm just going to play it through my phone because this works just fine. So this is the video.
This wasn't a video I was planning on making, but I have no excuses, full stop. I was selfish on Sunday to have my brother and my videographer follow me around on the course on e-bikes, and it had serious consequences. We endangered other runners, we impacted people going for PBs, we blocked people from getting water, and with the New York City Marathon being about everyone else and about the community, I made it about myself. And for anyone I impacted, I'm sorry. To be clear, this is 100% on me. It wasn't my brother trying to get a shot. It wasn't my partners asking me to get content. I just got really excited about the thought of hitting sub 3 in New York, and I got overzealous about getting all the shots. I got an email from New York Roadrunners last night about the DQ and the lifetime ban at all future NYR events. And although there's an opportunity to appeal it, I'm not going to. I made my bed, so I'm going to lay in it. This isn't the first time being called out for using e-bikes to shoot content, but that stops here. It won't happen again. My word is my bond.
Whew, a lot to unpack there. So that video has over 4,000 comments. 4,000 comments. Oh, excuse me. It has nearly 4,500 comments. 4,500 comments. It has 37,000 likes and 20.1 K shares. That is a lot of shares. Now, I don't know what the purpose of people sharing that video is, of course. Maybe they're like fans and be like, yo, did you see this? Now, one thing that I forgot to mention and kind of didn't mention in regards to the New York City Marathon ban is that he actually got disqualified from the New York City Marathon. But on top of that, he actually got banned from any New York road runners, which is basically any race in New York. Now, I don't know if that just pertains to New York City or if that's the entirety of New York, because I know that they have mile races in New York. They have track events in New York. Now, I'm assuming that's actually being banned from competing. I don't think like they're going to ban him, but like, you can't show up, you're banned. Stop. Don't show up. Now, like he said, he's not doing this because of his partners. He's not doing this because of his brother or videographer. But yeah, it's negligible to say that he effed up. But how many F-ups before nobody believes you anymore? So one thing that he said in this video is that this was the last time that he will be using e-bikes. But it wasn't the first time that he's used e-bikes to help film content during a marathon. Now, I'm going to point this out because there's a few comments that are actually pretty, how would you call it? Pretty eye-opening. So I'm going to read a comment here because I think this puts into perspective kind of the seriousness that this is. And I'll kind of go in to what this looks like. Is this, oh, where's that comment? It was a super long comment. Don't run. Oh, here it is. So this was 4 days ago. Taking Vic Picks says, everyone praising this guy for taking accountability. Sure, he's owning up, and I can respect that. That's not their words, that's mine. But quote, but let's not forget he posted 3 videos about the race before this apology. That is very true. He posted a pre-New York City Marathon like the day before, and then he posted a video during, kind of like semi-after, and then post retroactively of what it was during the race. It was basically like a selfie, almost just kind of like, hey, like I'm doing the New York City Marathon under 3 minutes, or 3 hours, excuse me. Not only that, but he also, so again, like I mentioned, his brother was on an e-bike, right? His brother, he also ran across the finish line with his brother, who wasn't in the race. This is selfishness taken to another level, right? I can get being like, yeah, like I'm a little, having that facade of like being above every other runner. Like I got to get the shots. I gotta film this race, especially because it's such a big race. But that should not collide with every other runner that is around you. Like every other runner, content creator that makes videos, grab your phone, film yourself. I have seen so many other people do the exact same thing of just filming themselves. And just because you had the brilliant idea to be like, oh, what about if we had e-bikes and put my videographer on it, my brother, and then they'll just be in front of me while I run. Like it makes it so much easier. You can't do that. And you shouldn't do that unless you're like out on like a trail run, you know, out on like out in the streets, not during a 55,000 runner race. What are you thinking, right? Obviously, again, he mentioned that he had endangered runners, stop people from getting PBs, and stop people from getting water. Like that is a very serious issue to have, right? Like if all in dandy, if he didn't cause too much disturbance, people probably wouldn't have noticed. You know, maybe there was a little bit of uproar, but nothing that was like, oh my gosh, you know, like you're endangering runners. People can't get PBs because your bike just cut them off. So let me continue with this. So he posted 3 videos about the race before this apology, which means he had time to reflect with every edit made to those videos, and he still chose his image over the sport. Now, this comment is just paragraph 1 of 6. I think it's important to note that, yeah, he did post 3 videos and that you still have a conscious effort and you're making a conscious choice to actually still post those. The CrossFit just had a death on their hands. Guess what they did after that? They did not post anything until things were resumed, right? They didn't just think about going on without like the feeling and sense that, hey, we need to like react to this first. And maybe I effed up, you know, maybe we effed up. Let's handle the situation and then we'll move forward from there. But Matthew decided to choose, again, his image over every other runner that was running. So paragraph 2 says, he literally tells you in the beginning, I wasn't planning on making this video. Why? Because he quite literally had no intentions of taking any sort of responsibility for the way his choices impacted others until he had to. He had 26.2 miles to do the right thing. The first time his brother's bike clipped a runner, that should have been it. The first time they blocked somebody from the aid station, he should have told his brother to get off the course. For 2 hours and 57 minutes, he put his ego above the community. Now, again, the videos are one thing, but actively, as the time is ticking, and there are people getting hurt because of your brother, which is like, I don't understand why he's on the course. Put him at the finish line and see him then. Like, even if he hops over the fence and finish with you, I do not care. That is completely fine. Like, some people are going to be a little outraged by it. But I think that's a lot better than the situation that he's put himself in by having his brother bike 26.2 miles while also trying to evade the traffic that is like basically just a bunch of people running. Paragraph 3 says, he may be taking accountability, but he sure lacks integrity. Integrity would be not doing it in the first place. the conscious effort that Matt and his team made to go ahead and put two people on e-bikes and have them, mind you, again, these are not the like very own e-bikes. Like they went out of the way to download an app. There was a lot of the food chain in a way, right? The food chain has it from crops to distributors to stores, right? The food chain here is that they made the conscious effort to do this. This wasn't just like, oh, I can't believe this happened. Oh, I didn't even think about it. You thought about it. So with that, integrity would be not doing it again and again and again. So one thing that I forgot to mention, and like I mentioned earlier, is that he's done this before. He's done this at the Austin Marathon, the Brooklyn Half, and like this comment says, I'm sure countless others. Integrity would be not running with somebody else's bib in Houston claiming ignorance. This is also another thing that I want to get into. I cannot understand people accepting him. I can understand people accepting him and thanking him for his apology. That's fair, but that's not praise him for something he had to do to save his image. He sounds remorseful. Yeah, one of his collabs dropped him. And he's banned from NYRR. I'd be pretty remorseful too. That's what this comment says. Now, the last paragraph states, the best thing this guy can do moving forward is check his ego at the start line and put the phone down. That will demonstrate growth and earn respect. Now, there's a lot of other comments that have hundreds, even if not thousands of likes. A lot of people have reached the same sentiment. People are outraged by the actions of Matthew and his team. Now, I do agree with some type of ban. I do agree with that. He's obviously had Brooklyn interference, Brooklyn Half Marathon. That's in New York. Austin's not, but there seems to be some behavior, some chronic pattern of doing this, right? So the timeline looks like this. He did Austin, Texas Marathon in 23, used e-bikes. I don't know what type of punishment he got. But in early 2024, this is the same year, he decided to use e-bikes to help cover the event, help cover his race, not anyone else's, his race. And that also happened in New York. That happened in Brooklyn. It was only a half marathon, so only half the distance, half the time. But it is very, very important to note that there is past behavior that does not insurmount the one occasion that happened during the New York City Marathon, that is. Now, one is saying that, man, I effed up enough when you've done this on 3 separate occasions. And not to mention, this was something that I found out a few months ago, and it kind of put me a little off on Matt because, again, we're making conscious choices, not only on social media when we're posting stuff, we're putting our images on the line every time we make a decision. I'm a content creator. I don't have thousands of followers constantly like tuning in. I have a bunch of people that, tune into my streams, watch the videos that I post. Yeah, I may not feel like the thousands of pressure from the people, but I do still feel a sense of image that I will uphold as a person, morally and righteously. And one of the biggest things is that there is a conscious effort going forward in every planning aspect. You don't just show up on the day. What about if we just show up with e-bikes? You don't do that. That's not a natural thought. So to do it once and apologize and get caught for it, again, he's only apologizing because he got caught for it in the outrage that came after. But you don't do that one time. And then what about if we did it again? And what about if we did it during the largest marathon in the world? You don't put that. Is there anyone on his team that's like, maybe we don't do that? Like, is there anyone on this team? Is there any accountability? And now I don't mean to mention like the Liam Payne death, but yes, there are people around you that maybe could still take responsibility. We've seen it with the drug dealer. We've seen it with, of course, the manager and maybe even the hotel staff, if I've got that right. So why is nobody on Matthew's team being like, hey, maybe we should stop doing this, Like, I don't know. Maybe we don't do that. Maybe we don't go on e-bikes and film and run over people's feet and, get in the way of everyone, because bikes are extremely dangerous when you're running, like, especially with more people. It's It's a lot scarier. It very much is. Like, imagine, like, you've seen those videos of people on bikes going through, like, Manhattan, and there's a bunch of cars around them. Now, imagine those cars are runners. You have no idea where they're going to weave. The bike is going, obviously, way faster than any runner around it. Again, not so much just because they're right in front of Matthew. But the biggest thing is that you still endanger those around you. And again, the one thing that kind of turned me off was that Matt made the conscious choice to wear somebody else's bib so that they, the person that didn't run, could actually maybe win an award for that race. And not only that, like I mentioned with the Boston Marathon, is you have to actually qualify for that. So bib swapping is a big no-no in, in racing. Now, people cut courses all the time. That's why they usually have about these mats on the floor that you'll run over so that you could check your splits. And usually what you could see is if somebody ran a super fast mile, like faster than world record, you know that they cut the course. There is no doubt about that. Now, some people, again, bib swap. But if I were to take Matthew's bib and somebody's like, oh my goodness, I want to see the photos of Matt. And they see me like, what do I see this Mexican, Norwegian native dude? That doesn't look like Matt. I mean, I look like Markiplier's son, but I don't look like Matt. Like, I'm not like 6 foot tall. The biggest disgrace that people can do in competitive racing, especially something like that, might be bib swapping. Like, that might be one of the things that is like a big no-no. Like, I understand if like you and your friend did it and you just got your bib swapped. Like, you just like honest mistake. Like, that could very much happen. Like 48-18 and 48-19. And maybe, I don't know, your twins or your best buds, you know, you're running together, right? And maybe for like the last half, you're like, oh my gosh, like that was, you were wearing my bib and I was wearing yours. You like checked it. Like, I can completely understand that, right? Completely understand that. But when there is money on the line, when there is qualification standards on the line, and you're actively trying to seek that for somebody else, that is a big no-no. And that should have been strike one, if not the line of events of 2 or 3 being like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I should look at myself and be like, hey, my integrity needs to surmount my actions in this case. And so if I'm Matthew in the world that we live in, there's 1 or 2 things that I think that maybe he could do. Take some time away from running. Maybe you just run on your own, don't really film anything. You just take a little bit of a break from social media and you come back a better man. And yeah, maybe people are going to ride with you still. And there's another choice that kind of seems a little obvious. And I'm sure there's obviously other choices that Matt and his team could go around. But right now, I think they're on damage control mode. And so what I think damage control mode looks like, and I think ideally what's going to happen, is either A, they're going to take a break. 2, and maybe there's a third option. I'll get into that third option. But 2 is almost just act like nothing happened. You made the apology. You still kind of post and be like, yo, I'm a better man. I'm doing better, you know. I'm going to like these running events. I'm trying to get people motivated. I'm doing these things. And 3 is literally acting like nothing happened. Like nothing happened. There are people outraged. It's thousands of people. It's not everyone in the world. But just like myself, who found out that he bib swapped, kind of turned me off from Matt. And it kind of turns me off from any appearance that I see in videos. Like, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, he's a talented athlete. Don't get me wrong. He's ran nearly 300 miles. I'm trying to get the kilometers, like 496. But he's ran 300 miles from the southern tip of South Korea to the northern, or vice versa, one of the two, but basically end to end of South Korea. That is insane. And he did that during a certain period of time. That is nuts. There's not many people that could just get up and do that, you know, or trying to even do that. So when you think about it, yeah, it kind of just, I'm just like, you know, like I look at Logan Paul, I look at Mr. Beast and some of the stuff that's been going on recently. I look at Arak and I'm like, maybe, yeah, you know, there's different decisions that every content creator is going to make. And whether you are for them, against them, or you're kind of iffy, you're undecided. Just like the election that just happened. There's a lot of undecided viewers and a lot of voters, excuse me, not viewers. I'm in YouTube mode. But voters, right? There's a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, I'm way this way, I'm way that way. And then there's this gray zone. There's a mix of people, right? Well, what's best for me? Do I focus on me first? Do I focus on the country? Where do they lie with the candidates that are in front of them? You know, the major two and then anyone else? What's best for me? You know, is it me first or is it them first? And unfortunately for Matthew, his choices have been him first and his brother and the other guy that he swapped bibs with. Yeah, it sucks to see. I really hate to see somebody, you know, and I think it's hard because, like, I think he puts himself on a pedestal a lot of the times in his content. And not to say that he's like, oh yeah, like I'm running this, like bet you can beat me. But some of it is a little bit motivational, being like, you know, I'm getting up, I'm getting out. And I wouldn't say that any of that content kind of turns me off. Like, that motivates me, you know? But there is kind of like, yo, we're out here like, hey, look at this amazing thing that's happening. And I'm just like, it's kind of tough. It's tough to digest because I know what that has looked like. And for a while, and again, I'm going to bring Logan Paul into the frame because there was a point in time it's like, wow, like everything, like any action that he does, or any action that he felt like he, you know, made, there was no consequence. But then all of a sudden there's a Japan trip, and mind you, the vlog's actually decently good. It talks a lot about suicide, but a lot of people aren't going to like that. And a lot of people are like, you just filmed a dead body, didn't blur it, and you post it. The choice that you made had consequences. And no matter how you framed it, it didn't overcome those actions. Integrity over actions, and actions equal integrity. And so I hope for Matt, he can find some silver lining out of all this and become a better man. You know, I made decisions in my life that I'm just like, oh, wow, that's not so great. Like, I kind of look back at it, you know, whether that's something I said about Dolly Parton, you know, and I'm like, hey, that was a little out of line, you know, like I can reflect. Everyone has their own self-reflection. Some are a little bit bigger than others. Some are a little bit more crippling than others, being like, I got to be this perfect person, you know, but we make mistakes as humans. But when we continue to make the same mistake consciously, that's where we need to actually realign. We need to go to the chiropractor and get a realignment. And so, hold on. There's a cord. I have my cord running behind my chair here. I feel like this is like a professional production. It's just me, sockless, filming episode 66 of The Realest Podcast. Now, I've talked a lot about Matt Choi. I'm going to kind of leave it at that. I hope that he finds what he needs as a content creator. Hopefully he doesn't feel like there's any pressure. Just love what you do and make content. You know, I feel like a lot of content creators kind of get in this weird element where they're just like, I need the most. Create what you love. And that's why I like creators like Drew Gooden, Danny Gonzalez. I really like those creators, Chad. I really like creators like them, because like they make content that they find fun. And yeah, maybe there's a little bit of chasing of general trends or things like that. Every content creator kind of needs to do that in a way, but it never is sacrificial to their own integrity and the brand and the identity that they have for themselves. So one thing that I want to get into is the NBA, because I feel like the NBA is having a little bit of an identity crisis. Currently right now, as it sits, most teams have been through 10 games. Most teams have played 10. Some are on 9. Some are, you know, maybe on 11. I don't see anyone on 11 here. So 9 or 10, I would say. And so it's been a pretty crazy season so far. The NBA just started back up in late October. It is now the second week of November. A lot of games have been played. There's 82 games in total. And right now it's looking a lot like the... how would I say this? The 2016, like, I don't know if you guys remember the Cavalier-Warrior rivalry that happened like year after year. It kind of looks like that again in a way. But one of the biggest things that has been coming out of the NBA so far is the records. The Cavaliers are 10-0, which is crazy. The Celtics actually are 8-2. They're one of the heavy favorites, and I think, especially after the first game against the Knicks, where they tied the record for the most threes in a game, I think at 28 or 29. and missed 13 straight threes with like 6.5 minutes ago. They couldn't make a single three to actually get over the hump. Now, I think that they could have very well broken that record, but they did not on opening night. That would have been crazy. But they're sitting at 8-2, and those are the only two over 500 teams in the East. Now, in the West, it's a lot different of a playoff picture. Now, these are just standings, and obviously, as the season progresses, teams are going to shift and shuffle. So, where it sits right now is that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The 11th best team in the NBA on the Western Conference standings is the third best team in the Eastern. The 11th best team in the West is the third, and not tied, the third best team in the Eastern Conference at 5-4. So 11 teams are above 500 as of right now. The Suns have actually looked really hot. They just got a new coach, Mike Budenholzer, who actually was the coach for the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, if you want to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, oh God. So they're looking pretty good. They're 8-1. Thunder are also 8-1. They actually just lost to the Denver Nuggets in a very, very close game, like 122-124. Very cool, very fun game. The Warriors are hot at 7-2 right now. The Minnesota Timberwolves are running through Anthony Edwards at 6-3. Denver Nuggets are also at 6-3. The Memphis Grizzlies have Ja Morant back. Super happy to see that. They are sitting at 6-4. The Lakers started off pretty hot. They started off like 3-0. Maybe like 3-1. But they are 5-4 right now. They just got a win last night. As of recording this, the Rockets are 5-4. Clippers, Mavs, and Kings are also 5-4. This has been a pretty good season so far. Like, there's been a lot of parity. The Detroit Pistons are doing a lot better than they have been. They finally reached their fourth win, like 2.5 months earlier than they did last season under Monty Williams, who again was actually the former coach of the Suns, which is really, really funny. So the NBA season's back in full swing, and it's been kind of funny because it's giving vibes of, you know, even 10 years ago. 11 years ago, there were two franchises in the East that were not historically bad, but from a standing standpoint, they were historically bad. Most teams that are bad can at least get to 15 wins. Like most teams that are bad can get to 15 wins. Most kind of fizzle out around like 20, 25. Like, if you want to make the playoffs, you kind of have to hit like 40 wins. 40 wins is a good, solid playoff team, depending on what conference you're in. But like I was talking about the Bucks, they're 2-7 right now. The 76ers are 1-7 right now. And it's really funny because back in 2013, before Joel Embiid got drafted, and I think before Giannis got drafted, those teams were also the bottom two teams in the East. And on the West side right now, the Utah Jazz was the worst team that year as well, with also the Pelicans kind of lurking in that lower. I think they were the fourth worst team in the West that season, which is really, really funny. So it's looking like years past, like where we have the Cavaliers and Warriors, even if it's not LeBron James and Steph Curry this time, doing really well. But man, those teams will not leave. Those franchises are back in full swing. The Cavaliers just got a new coach as well, which has been really, really cool to watch. The Hornets got a new coach as well, and they've been rocking. I got LaMelo Ball in my fantasy. The Brooklyn Nets, I think, have a new coach, have been balling as well. I think it's very difficult for them because, like, I think every season they start off decently good, and they kind of fizzle out. They're going to be around, like, a 37-41 win team this season, I believe it. But I do want to talk about the NBA awards because NBA awards are so controversial. They're controversial. I hate to say it, but they are. They are super controversial. And even in any league, the NFL, TJ Watt should have been defensive player of the year last year. Lamar Jackson probably shouldn't have been the MVP. It probably could have been Josh Allen. But there's a lot of factors that kind of go into this. And the one unique thing about the NBA is that there are people in the media that vote for each category's winner. And it usually kind of goes top three. So you give a first place. So like, hey, I'm going to guess Jared Hathaway is the comeback player of the year, which technically isn't a thing in the NBA, but I do have it in my award. So I'm going to talk about it. But let's say I get like the most improved. And then let's say Caitlin Hathaway gets second. And let's say, my mom gets third, you know, so you get votes. So it's 5-3-1. And then usually, since there's a big pool, you'll usually get a fourth and a fifth. So you basically create your top five in order from the best person in that position this year who you think should deserve it down to 5. And you get a point per one per each and whatnot. I don't exactly know how that works with like the 4 and 5. And maybe I think that might be the regulatory, and then they have the finalists after. So you go from top 5 overall in preliminaries, and then you go top 3 afterwards. And people in the media vote for this. Like, it's very controversial. I think some of them are public. Most are pretty public. But commentators, analysts, people that work, within the NBA of some sort, vote for this. And they vote for the people that they believe is most deserving of that reward. So I have my NBA awards here. I will say that there have been some new awards that have kind of come through this year and in previous years. One that I came up with this year was the comeback player. I know the NFL has this, and I thought it would be really, really cool for the NBA to have this. There's been a lot of injuries, people that have sustained, some sort of like season-ending injury, and I thought it'd be cool to have a comeback player of the year. So there's that. The NBA Hustle's new. That was new last year. The clutch player was new 2 years ago. So these are my NBA awards. So to start off with my NBA awards, the MVP of this year is going to Luka Doncic. I really hope he will win this. 2 years ago, maybe even last year, I predicted that he would win it. He obviously didn't. Nikola Jokic won it. And then Joel Embiid won it last year or the year before. One of the two. Regardless, Luka better finally win this award. My goodness. So with that, your rookie of the year. I am not a super big Zach Edey fan, especially at Purdue. Not that he cooked anyone, but I think it was very one-dimensional play, and I didn't know how that was going to translate over into the NBA, but he has been on a killer run these last 2 games, and I think that that's only going to transcend throughout the season. So I have Zach Edey as my rookie of the year. In my DPOY, my defensive player of the year, a lot of people have Victor Wembanyama. I also have Victor Wembanyama. Victor Wembanyama he was a big finalist even as a rookie. Now, obviously, Bam Adebayo, I think, is going to go in there. He's usually a very good defensive front for only being 6'9". And then on top of that, he's coming off of a great Olympic year for both, again, Bam and Victor. Anthony Davis, I think, will also be in there. Rudy Gobert won it last year, though. Most improved player. Again, it can't be myself because I'm not in the league, but one thing about the MIP award is that a lot of people view MIP as you have to if you go from averaging 18 points a game to 25 points a game, or let's say even 22. Oh, most improved, he's a superstar. People are calibrating this most improved as you're moving into the superstar status. And I'm going to talk about how the media kind of controls the narrative in the NBA because I think it's really garbage and I do not like it. And one of the gripes that I have about the most improved award is that Jalen Williams should have been a finalist last year if he wasn't. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I know Kobe White won it. I don't know who was also in that finalist category, but he very well could have won it last year. And if he's gotten better over the offseason, how is he still in the conversation of most improved? Unless he's going from, again, 15 to 20 points, but now 20 to 35 points. Oh my God, he's a superstar. He's had a great season. Jalen Williams is my most improved this year, even if I don't agree with the semantics of how it's all going to come. But Jalen Williams, J-Dub, congratulations, you're my most improved. Clutch player of the year. A lot of years this has gone to DeMar DeRozan. Last year it went to Steph Curry. But this year I think it's going to Kevin Durant. He's had a few games where he's just had a takeover. He's had a takeover in the final 5 minutes. Usually they call clutch time, 5 minutes within 5 points. And usually Kevin Durant this year has been on a tear. He was going against the Lakers, and they were down big. They were down, I think, even up to 24, 22 points. And they somehow worked their way back. And in the fourth quarter, Kevin Durant takeover was initiated and activated. And so Kevin Durant is getting my Clutch Player Award of this season. The NBA Hustle Award, I still like Alex Caruso. He won it last year. There's no world where I think he doesn't win it this year. You know what I mean? He is a hustle player. Even if he's playing on a new team, I think he's a hustle player nonetheless. So I think Alex Caruso wins that award again. Now, like I said, I have a comeback player of the year. This is somebody who sustained a injury that was season ending, somebody that I don't know, maybe just took some time away from basketball, meaning like, hey, they weren't on a team or maybe just didn't want to play for a few years, but then came back. That's happened before. Some people have, had injuries like in the year before and then were out that rest of the season, but then came back. Like Kevin Durant had his Achilles rupture and then was out the next year and then came back. So my comeback player of the year goes to Ja Morant from the Memphis Grizzlies. He obviously faced a 25-game suspension because of his IG Live fiasco and stuff going on with that, his off-court issues. And so he got a ban for that. He comes back, balls out like he always does, like he should have, and like he always does, like I mentioned, like I just said. But then he tore something in his shoulder, and he was out for the season. And it was so sad. It was so sad. But I think for him, if he stays healthy, he will be the comeback player of the year. So, one thing that I've kind of talked about with the media, and especially with that Most Improved award, there is one thing that I don't necessarily agree with the NBA. I think they do it very unique with how the media votes, especially for All-Star Weekend. They have the players vote, but the percentages, it's all right. They have basically what changed is that people would vote for All-Star, but then people would vote for like Boban Marjanovic. He's not an All-Star by any means, but he's a fan favorite. And so what they ended up doing was 50% is media, 25% is votes, and then 25% is the actual players. And I might get the percentages wrong for players and, of course, the media. So that those might flip-flop 25-50. But what basically ends up happening is that they try and eliminate like any voting like being like the biggest causation for somebody to be an all-star. But what they also do is, especially with the media, is that they're trying to push these superstars. Domantas Sabonis should have been in the All-Star game last season, but he wasn't. Can you guess who took a spot? Karl Anthony Towns. Now, I think Karl Anthony Towns had a great season, but Domantas Sabonis had a record streak of double-doubles. He was second overall in triple-doubles, and for some reason, he was snubbed of a All-Star break appearance. So, one of the things that the NBA recently just did was fire one of their best analysts, Zach Lowe. Now, Zach Lowe's not like a guy that you look at and you're like, no, he is kind of a guy that you look at and you just give like a thumbs up. Like, yeah, I like that guy's take. He's not a guy that you're not going to really be mad about. His takes and what he has to say never really is divisive. And that's the issue with the firing. The issue with ESPN in particular is one of the biggest sports broadcasting services in the world, especially in the U.S., is that not only with the firing of Zach Lowe, in years past, Max Kellerman got fired, and Woj actually just retired. Woj was one of the biggest news analysts for the NBA. He was the breaking insider. He had all the insights within the teams, and he was the guy that broke all the news. So basically what it was called was a Woj bomb. And for Wojnarowski to retire, Shams take over that role. Max Kellerman, as much as people clowned him for his take, if the aliens point a death beam at the U.S. and you have somebody taking the three, Steph Curry, Iguodala, I'm taking Iguodala. Statistically, he probably should have took Iguodala. Iguodala had a higher percentage of threes in the finals. Steph Curry wasn't playing great games before he actually said that. And has been notoriously really bad in the finals, especially early on. He has every right to say Andre Iguodala. That is his opinion. He's not trying to be divisive in that way and trying to undermine Steph Curry. But a lot of people always clown him for that one moment. But he's statistically right. And what ESPN has done with the firing of Zach Lowe, and especially something that's been happening with some of the commentators, is that I feel like some commentators have become rather bitter. Some commentators like Jeff Van Gundy, who was actually a commentator and now he was on the Boston Celtics last year for basketball operations, but now is on the Clippers for some sort of assistant or basketball operations. He seemed usually pretty bitter every single time that I would hear him commentate. And the Warriors' in-house commentary sounds a little bit bitter at times. And now I'm not going to criticize the in-house commentators. That's the team's decision. But for people that control the narrative, somebody like Zach Lowe and his firing, somebody that is highly respected, one. Two, somebody that's usually pretty right, Like, he's usually pretty spot on. He's looking at teams and maybe decisions that they're trying to make. Now, there's people that are going to be like, oh my God, like this trade, you're going to have to give up so much for that trade to happen. You know, there's an Instagram page called NBA Trade Center, and they go into the depth of like, are these trades possible? Pretty much. They run the money, they run the luxury tax, they run what apron they're in. Like, is that trade even possible? What type of assets with money attached to it are they going to have to give up to go get somebody like Zach LaVine? Now, free agency is a lot different. Trading is a lot harder. One of the biggest things is that there's people out there that are going to be a little bit more like, there's rumors that this trade's about to happen. It can't. It physically cannot happen. It's not going to happen. It's like it's not whether a fact if it is or isn't. It can't. There's a huge outlier in can't and is or isn't, especially with rumors. And somebody for Zach Lowe, he's a very level-headed guy, very logical, very level-headed to the point that he got fired because he was so level-headed and logical. That what that shows is that for ESPN and even like the Inside NBA, like, I hate the bickering. I hate this needs to be a clip. This needs to be something so like polarizing. This needs to be a highlight. And with the NBA's coverage of what they've been doing, especially from a commentary standpoint, an analyst standpoint, but also this weird bubble of just the NBA and the media, is that they are piggybacking so hard on people to be superstars. What happens if they're not? What happens if they don't? Now, I'm not going to sit here and be like, hey, like, I don't have the answers. But what I do know from a fan standpoint is that it's very obvious that the NBA media and the landscape that it's kind of turned to is it's just clicks. It's a quote. It's something that could happen. It's so like, that was 2 days ago type news, right? There's something new to talk about. And I personally have never had a great or a fond opinion about Stephen A. Smith. I think Stephen A. Smith, especially in his early goings of how he got his start, was, I think, very respectable. Like, somebody that wants his position is good enough to do it. But in this new landscape of social media and things getting turned into clips and highlights and one-off pieces, is that we've kind of lost this love for the game. We've lost this love of fundamentals, of what it means to actually play good basketball. Like, yeah, it's super cool when, like, dunks happen and, like, posters happen. It's super cool. I love it. It makes the game so much exciting. But that can't be the sole source of food for people to digest. The sole source of content for viewers to digest. One thing that kind of ended up happening, and they do this a lot during the finals, is this narrative building. They try and build a narrative. They really tried forcing it with the Nuggets and Miami. Now, yes, obviously Miami was an 8 seed. They were trying to make a push to the finals. They ended up getting to the finals. But the Nuggets were no match. The Miami Heat were no match for the Denver Nuggets. Yes, narratives are fine and they're great. Storytelling within the NBA is fantastic. And Brian Windhorst came out and said, like, yeah, we need some sort of storyline because there's been a decline in the NBA recently. And guess what? When people are worried about the decline, guess what goes away? Or more or less, guess what fills that void? Storylines. Storylines, especially in the early going, they tried doing this whole Emirates Cup, the in-season tournament, to kind of start off the season so more people would watch. They started putting more double headers. They started putting really good matchups early in the season like they do in the NFL. But what happens when you have 17 games, 18 weeks in the NFL compared to 82 weeks? Obviously, you don't have a bye in the NBA, but you have that break mid-season with the All-Star break. Some people obviously play through it because they're All-Stars or they made it to that weekend. But others, take time for their family and they kind of reset. These storylines so early on don't really make any sense. Nobody knows how the season's going to go. The NBA is really only good after All-Star break. That is really it, maybe leading up towards trade deadline. But the sports landscape and the media that's kind of covered it is, again, the only content that kind of becomes polarizing or, worth noting is those one-off digestible clips. Storylines are so important. And especially with the Boston and Maverick series that happened last year was one of these people are going to win their ring for the first time. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Luka Doncic. Kyrie's already won one before with the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016. The hard truth about media these days is that everything has to be a clip. And people use clip farming in the point that, like, oh, I know this is going to be something. That is not clip farming. Clip farming is the people that are actually taking those clips and posting them. That is clip farming. You are farming what is being put out. You are harvesting the crops that have been given to you. Now, you could say both are, interchangeable. But the NBA has recently seen a decline in viewership since the same part of last year. Now, last year, Victor Wembanyama came into the league. He was this big polarizing person that people have been looking out from when he was playing with the Metropolitans, getting drafted, Summer League. There was an overarching umbrella for somebody like him. Could you tell me of any storyline that has happened with any rookie this year? No. And guess what happens when that happens? People instantly think that there's no reason to watch because there's nobody better than what's already in the NBA. There's nobody coming in to fill this void of newbie, freshman, rookie class that is good enough to take the spotlight from not just Victor Wembanyama, but to even get a glimpse of the light, even if it's dim. Zion Williamson, people want to see him out of college into the NBA. People want to see LeBron James. People want to see Victor Wembanyama. Now, everyone, when we get to the draft, like, I'm not going to lie, the draft is probably more exciting than who is going to be, like, playing in the early parts of the season. It doesn't matter. There's no edge towards that. But the in-season tournament was kind of like a Band-Aid to that. It was kind of like a better material to do that. The decline this year was that the double night opening night doubleheader was down 42% from last season. That's a lot. That's a lot. Let's say 1.42 million people watched the NBA last season. That's nearly less than 1 million people watched it this year. That's a lot of people. Milwaukee Bucks versus the 76ers dropped 33% compared to the Celtics Knicks the year prior. 33% is a lot. Suns versus Clippers, nearly 50% decline. That is a lot of people. That's half. Nearly half the amount of people. TNT Spurs versus Mavericks down 29%. Nobody wants to watch the Spurs versus Mavericks. It's a boring game. I didn't even watch it. I'm a Mavs fan. ESPN's Friday night Pacers versus Knicks, low viewership at 830,000, below competing college football. College football is having more people on a Friday night game between the Pacers and Knicks, who played in the playoffs last year. Now, I'm not saying that there's rivalries, and I'm not saying that they should manufacture these facade storylines. This draft class was pretty weak. Nobody was really that good, but it was more or less who are these teams going to kind of pick up? Zach Edey being the player of the year. You have Reed Shepherd. You have a whole bunch of people out in France that where are they going to come from? What are they going to do? They went 1, 2, and 6, and they've all been really, really bad. To kind of start off the season, they've had some glimpses, but it takes some time to get going in the NBA. And the hard truth is that the lack of storylines and the lack of excitement, I have hardly watched any Miami Heat games. I've hardly watched any Maverick games to start off the season. It's really, really cool the night before election night that you go out and they all play and then you go vote the next day. But it really sucks to see because I wish that there were more of these just storylines. Is Victor Wembanyama going to live up to the Defensive Player of the Year? I'm not going to say they have to televise him all the time, but it's just highlights. It's these top 10s. It's these hey, let's look at this moment. I will say I like the post-game interview, but the one thing that I will not miss about the Inside NBA on TNT is everything just becomes like a bickering match. I want to have some laughs. I want to have some fun. But when Shaq's on Angel Reese's podcast talking about how she looks good in booty shorts, and Charles Barkley just sounds bitter because he never won a ring, And Kenny has the worst takes, and it doesn't look good, especially at All-Star break when he's like, oh, Sabrina should have been shooting with women's balls on the women's arc. They're playing with dolls, whatnot. If you know the quote, you know the quote. Ernie Johnson really holding it down one time. He's the solid anchor to the inside the NBA. But every single time that I'm seeing these people, these pundits, I might add, these pundits of the NBA, whether it's their job to or not, it feels like this manufactured, like we're trying to push something, we're trying to get a clip, we're trying to get something. Talk about the game. Talk about the game that people love. Yes, people love divisiveness, but people know when they're annoyed of things. We've seen this with Taylor Swift. People hate when Taylor Swift is just like everything they see on their feed. Every single thing. And people get tired of people bickering constantly because they probably deal with it at home. Their loved ones, their friends. They just want to watch some basketball. They want to watch some sports. Like, I get it if Travis Kelce, like, scores a touchdown, you show Taylor Swift. But just because, like, she walked into the building and drank water, you know, oh my goodness. It's the world is turning quicker. It's turning faster, you know. Or, like, if it's, like, a big play, then show the fans celebrating. Show the people that are actually making these... People are in the stands paying money. Like, show their reaction. Like, make them feel like they are noticed. And that's the biggest thing. I'm glad that the Clippers actually moved arenas because they've actually given a purpose to the wall. The storyline in the wall is really, really cool. Are people going to live up to hitting clutch free throws with the giant wall behind them? That's super cool. Are the Orlando Magic, especially with Paolo Banchero, are they going to be able to hold together, string some wins together? Are the Golden State Warriors a pretender or a contender? They have one of the best defenses in the league. They have a top 5 defense and a top 5 offense currently, right now. Not only that, the Thunder, they look unstoppable. The Boston Celtics looked unstoppable, but maybe they've humbled them. They've humanized themselves. But any game that they've lost has actually been really, really close. The Golden State Warriors versus the Boston Celtics, that was a matchup of the 22 finals. That was insane. That was a very good game. Like, it's not just like, when you try and force something and it doesn't turn out how you presented it to be, people lose interest. People lose trust. So when you're trying to say that the Chris Paul, Victor Wembanyama duo is going to try and go up against the Mavericks in the early goings of the season, my God. Now, if you have like the Pacers versus the Knicks, and again, the lowest viewership, but I feel like it's an outlier. Tyrese Halliburton didn't shoot well. Maybe use that as a storyline, right? And maybe they are. Maybe they're not. But it really is frustrating because I wish the NBA was doing better. I wish the NBA was doing better to the point that they're not trying to make these facade storylines, again, where they're trying to force, like, these teams. Like, it would be really cool if, like, the Warriors and Cleveland Cavaliers, like, and that was, like, the primetime game. Now, it's obviously hard to predict how teams are going to do. That's usually, you could usually tell who, like, people are going to try and be broadcasted versus teams that aren't. It's very difficult to manage injury. It's very difficult to manage, like, who's going to be played that night. You know, there's been a lot of storyline about the 76ers. Joel Embiid. What's up with him? Why isn't he playing? I literally have no idea why he's not playing. And I follow basketball like somewhat religiously. I have no idea why he's not playing. The New Orleans Pelicans. Like 4, 5 starters, at least guys that are on the team actively in rotation, are injured. Zion Williamson out with a hamstring injury. McCollum. What's his name? The entire Pelicans are out. They are so banged up right now. Storyline once they all come back. Can they rise? Can they string some wins together to try and make a playoff push? I don't know if it's possible. But I know for damn sure that something needs to change with the NBA. Because the landscape of the media and what's being covered and what's being shown and what's being presented is showing. It's showing in the decline in viewership. There's no excitement for people to I'm going to go spend 2.5 hours watching a game. Kevin Durant has single-handedly made me tune in. Kevin Durant, this guy does not care about any of the basketball media, has made me care more than the media themselves. Kevin Durant. And I love Kevin Durant. He's one of my favorite players of all time. And on top of that, you have teams that Oh my goodness, the Cleveland Cavaliers are 10-0. When is that O going to go? It's the same thing with boxing. Is that O going to go? Are these matchups going to be favorable? Jake Paul and Mike Tyson are going to be going. Now, Jake Paul knows how to sell a fight. I'll damn sure. If the NBA needs to hire somebody like Jake Paul, not Jake Paul himself, but somebody that could actually string together some strategy to make like matchups a little bit more exciting. Yeah, I'm probably going to miss the Pistons versus Charlotte Hornets game. I'm probably not going to watch that. But that's okay. Show me what happened these past 4 games, when they come back into primetime or something. The Pistons sucked last year. They're decently okay. Can they sprinkle some magic together? Is Cade Cunningham still going to be on his triple-double streak? Domantas Sabonis was on a double-double streak and nobody talked about it. And guess what happens when nobody talks about it? Him, the team, and the entire NBA fandom are going to talk about it and be like, why is Karl Anthony Towns in the All-Star break? Right? Why is he there? I'm going to talk about some Grammy nominations because I'm going to talk about some of my winners, some of my picks. This isn't going to be for every Grammy nomination, but I want to talk about the Grammys because we just talked about the NBA, and I think one of the biggest things with, again, the NBA is that the media and these awards get kind of clustered, and they get very watered down, especially when you give Macklemore the best hip-hop album when he shouldn't even be on the list, right? The Grammys have kind of watered themselves down, like I kind of alluded to with the NBA media, is that they try and push so much of these, like, hey, they've lost the actual art of music. It's just who's ever popular, who is having the most streams, right? Like, people can still make good music and great music. I've heard so much music from my guy, Yujin. He makes a ton of great content, like reacting to like these very, very like not popular artists, and they are way better than most artists I hear on the radio. Most, like, some people make some really good music on the radio, and I understand that labels have kind of controlled a lot of things, but I'm gonna give some of my Grammy picks because the Grammy nominations just came out. Some people have been snubbed. I know from like a rap perspective, I'll kind of mention it. Some people have been snubbed. Some people shouldn't even be on the list. I would rather, this is just me, rap hasn't had a great year from an album standpoint. There's been some albums that have been put out. They're nothing that's been outstandingly great. But I would rather have 5 albums up for nomination that I do not know about, like Killer Mike, Andre 3000. I know who Andre 3000 is, but like an album that didn't get like the love it deserves on the list, then 5 albums that did like mediocre and are just popular because of the artist. And I'll kind of get to it. Record of the year. Now we have like the Beatles. Interesting. Didn't even know they came out with one. Beyonce, Texas Hold'em, Espresso, 360 by Charlie, Birds of a Feather by Billy, Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar, Good Luck Baby by Chappelle Roan. Fortnite by Taylor Swift and Post Malone. That is the record of the year nominations. Now, I'm kind of going in with this as, yes, who I think will win it because of the Grammys, and then 2 who I think should win it. Record of the year, to me, is going to go to Kendrick Lamar on both ends. I think that this record, no matter what it embodies, I think it was just the biggest song of the year, whether you liked it or not. I think that gets the record of the year nod. Album of the year. Now, it's quick to note that there are no rap albums, even though Andre 3000 has made rap music before. It's actually his flute album. I think his New Blue Sun is actually a really great album. I would love to see him win that. I don't think he is. Jacob Collier, he had a great album from what I've heard, but I think Billie wins both. I think Billie should win both. Her album is super great. It sonically sounds great, and it's hit me hard and soft. That's the album of the year. Song of the year goes to Not Like Us. This is going up against Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars, Birds of a Feather, a bar song, Get a Little, Me and Jack Daniels, got it, however it goes. Please, with Sabrina Carpenter, though it is kind of weird that that's the song of the year, but Espresso's the record of the year. Okay, see, that's the thing. I feel like some of those, they're just like the exact same thing almost. And that's kind of tough. I think record is more or less like a single. No, because that wouldn't, I don't know. How do you, I don't freaking know. Best new artist, I would love Doechii to win this. I think she's super talented. She actually went on tour with Doja Cat beforehand, not too long ago. You have Teddy Swims in there. You have Shabuzi, Chappelle I don't know how to say her last name. My girlfriend knows how to say it. You have Ray. I think Ray's great. Karangbin? I don't know how to pronounce that. Benson Boone. These are obviously artists that I don't recognize. But Sabrina Carpenter, I think, will win that award. I think she's a big, I think it's just her time, as a best new artist. Something that I mentioned even in the NBA is like the most improved. It's like, well, she's already made music before, you know, she's had talented songs that have done well. So it's like weird, like best new artist. Like, yeah, that just feels a little weird. Like Chappelle Roan is like a new artist. Like she's made music for the past 4 years, but it was like her blow up year this year. Doechii, I think, should win it, but Sabrina Carpenter wins it in my opinion. Best solo pop performance, we have Bodyguard by Beyonce, Espresso, Apple by Charlie, Good Luck Babe by Chappelle, Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish will win that award in my opinion. Is the best song on here by far. And Billie always puts a ton of effort in her production, which definitely shows. And she's also a very talented artist in her own right. So now we have Best Pop Duo / Group Performance. We have Us by Gracie Abrams featuring Taylor Swift, Levi Jeans featuring Beyonce and Post Malone, Guess featuring Charlie and Billie, which is a crazy song, The Boy Is Mine, Ariana Grande, Brandy, and Monica, Die With a Smile, Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars. I think Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars wins that. The most popular on that, I don't know, Guess is pretty new, excuse me. That definitely did numbers. The Boy Is Mine, really good album by Ariana Grande and a really good song. But I think Die With a Smile is definitely the best song on here, I would say, and definitely should be deserving. Best Pop Vocal Album, again, I'm giving that to Billie. It's like, how is this any, I guess it's like best album and then best pop album. Yeah, it kind of, yeah, it's like if you win that, you probably are going to win the pop album, you know? If you win the best album, then that, yeah. Best music video, this is a few of them. We have Fortnite by Taylor Swift and Post Malone. Not that great of a music video, but it's up for nomination. Not Like Us, I think, will win, but I definitely want Taylor Swift by A$AP Rocky to win. That music video stayed in the vault for 3 years, and it was pretty crazy because, like, it's one of those ones, it's like, what do you want in the music video? Yes, that's exactly what that music video is. It's a trip. It's super cool. The song's pretty catchy as well, but it definitely is like the best music video as of meaning. Houdini's in there and 360 by Charlie's in there. Best rap performance. Now, again, I'm going to give this to Kendrick Lamar. I think that song and the entire record and the entire lead up to it is super big. Now, Doechii's Nissan Altima, definitely a great song. Wouldn't say... I guess this is a music video, excuse me. But great song, by the way. Houdini, Like That. Yeah, Glow by Glorilla. Enough, Miami by Cardi B is also in there. I don't know if I've heard that song. When the Sun Shines Again by Common and Pete Rock featuring some other person. But I will say that I think Not Like Us wins that. Best rap album. So there's a little bit of controversy with this because... Doechii's getting her flowers, which is great. Again, I would rather have a handful of artists that I don't necessarily know be a part of this instead of just like 5 artists that I'm just like, oh, you're shoving it down our throats, right? So we have Might Delete Later by J. Cole. We have The Auditorium by Common and Pete Rock. You have Alligator Bites Never Heal by Doechii, The Death of Slim Shady by Eminem, and We Don't Trust You by Future and Metro Boomin. Excuse me. Now, a lot of people are going to be Ride or Die on Metro Boomin and that whole album. Now, Might Delete Later wasn't a great album. Wasn't a great album. It's a solid album, but wasn't a great album. The Alligator Bites Never Heal is a fantastic album. It's somebody that truly loves artistry, truly loves rap, is really good at that as well. And Doechii, I believe, should be well deserving of this. A missed snub is Schoolboy Q's Blue Lips. I don't know who that would necessarily take over, probably Eminem and whatnot. I'm surprised Eminem actually even entered himself into the Grammys. I think he just does it despite them, to be honest, like puts them through the effort. But even though he might not win. But yeah, I think Schoolboy Q's Blue Lips should have been in this list. Maybe even add like another person into it. Best rap song, we have Asteroids by Rhapsody. We have Carnival, Like That, Not Like Us, and Yeah Glow. Personally, if you ask me, Not Like Us is going to win that. Yeah, there's no other song that should win that. Best song written for visual media. Now, this is a pretty odd one. This is the last one that I have on my list. Now, there's country, there's rock, a whole bunch of other stuff, but these are songs that are basically written for some type of movie, some type of actual cinematic film. Now, you have like songs like Better Place from like Trolls. Like that's the type of song that I mean. And so you have Ain't No Love in Oklahoma from Twister, which is a song by Luke Combs. You have Better Place from Trolls, Band Together by NSYNC and Justin Timberlake. You have Can't Catch Me Now from The Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Olivia Rodrigo. You have It Never Went Away from American Symphony by John Bastide. Love Will Survive, The Tattoo of the Tattooist of Auschwitz by Barbara Streisand. I know how to pronounce the name. I don't know how to. I do and I don't. But also, that was an amazing series, by the way. We watched episode 1, and my mom and I never watched it again. But it was really good. The first episode, my mom got very frustrated that first episode and turned it off. I was like, well, I'm enjoying it. Like, this is like actually pretty good. Like, the visuals are good. But I will say, like, Can't Catch Me Now by Olivia Rodrigo will win that. I haven't heard the Twister. I haven't heard the Trolls. I haven't heard the other It Never Went Away. But I will say I think Can't Catch Me Now is my guess as to who will win and who I guess would want to win. So the Grammy nominations are there. The Grammys are in early February, so we're going to kind of see how that goes. But those are my Grammy nominations for, I guess, this upcoming Grammy cycle. Now, obviously, there's some albums that are coming out that obviously don't get to be a part of that because you have to enter your music in at a certain point in time. Obviously, anything after that kind of gets led into the next portion of Grammy nominations. So with that concludes today's episode of The Realest Podcast. This was a long episode, by the way, but I do hope you guys did enjoy. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys again so much for 400 subscribers on the YouTube. If you guys are listening to on audio, make sure to give it a 5-star rating, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Peace.